Hamish, there's so much that I could sit here and talk to you about. Number one, congratulations. But before we get into any of that, you actually only became set director in 2012. Is that right?
Decorator. I've been in the business for about 27 years, but the role of the set decorator, I moved up into that role about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Yeah.
And then as far as the Revenant goes, you were actually recommended for the position. How did that all come about?
One of my mentors is a man named Jim Erickson, who was an Oscar-winning decorator for Lincoln, and I worked with him for years, and he's taken me around the world. I've worked in Thailand and South America for Jim, and he did a movie with Jack Fisk, the production designer of The Revenant, called There Will Be Blood, which they both got nominated for. And Jack called Jim when he got the script for The Revenant, and he knew Jim was retired, but just wanted to talk to him, and Jim said, "You've got to call Hamish," so I'll be forever thankful for that. So.
And as if the recommendation wasn't enough to say, Hamish is the guy, Hamish has got what it takes, you now have an Oscar nomination.
Yeah, that's going to hold it for now. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a crazy 24 hours, and the whole team is really excited about it, all my crew, and I'm really happy about it. And it's something they, win or lose, they can't take the nomination away, so we're very excited. Yeah.
Now, when you get the initial phone call about doing a movie, about working on set, is that when all the research begins?
Yeah, it's Jack called and, I think Jack's assistant called and arranged an interview. I had an interview with him, and we immediately started talking. I think the interview was supposed to be about 30 minutes, and we talked for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and we just couldn't stop talking about how exciting that era was. And then I think a couple days later, he said, "I'd really like you to join me on this journey," which means you're hired. And gave me a start date, and I was just finishing up another movie, but every evening I would just devour everything I could about that era, because the research was really fun about the 1820s and the fur trade and what was happening in the United States at that time. And so I just dove right in right away. And then when we started officially, and I started working for the production company, it just snowballed from there, and drawings started to form, and we started to understand what we're going to do. And of course the script was available then, and the shooting schedule, and what we were going to do and where we were going to do it. And so it was quite a journey.
Now, before we jump right into the specifications of this movie in particular and what it took, can you give my viewers a little bit of a rundown on what it is that a set decorator does?
Okay, yeah, I've done this before.
Once or twice.
Yes. Right? So the production designer, my boss, Jack Fisk, he is in charge of the whole look of the movie, especially the drawing of the sets to be built, and how they're built and how they're finished, and the paint treatments and all that sort of stuff. Oversees everything. Under him are all the art directors and the drafts people and the illustrators that sort of provide the blueprints for making the sets. And then my job as the decorator is to not only research the right things for those sets, if it's a police station, what goes in the police station, but for the case of the Revenant, what were period correct items? So in a trapper's camp, what was the sort of gear they were using? How did they set up their camps typically? What was the sort of method of setting things up in relation to rivers and their boat? And we came up with a sort of a layout of how that was going to work for the camera. So then there's other situations where it's straight up decorating, like in Captain Henry's house at the fort. I did a lot of research through journals and paintings of what would a fur trader captain have at a fort 200 miles, 300 miles away from the nearest other civilization. And we just sort of got into it, and then I started to do the research, what were the right things, and then I spoke with Jack a lot about how aged things would be, and if he brought up a tea set to impress a local chief, would that be all chipped, or would we have it hidden and nobody ever used it? So I get into a lot of details of the character with Jack, and decide what's going to be the final look of the movie, and we try different things, and then they film it. And I know that I didn't have to make many changes. I think the director liked everything we did. So.
Now, you mentioned journals and paintings. I'm assuming that's because it's the 1820s. It's before photography.
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, there's three major painters of the time. Carl Bodmer Arthur Miller and George Catlin, and they extensively covered what life was like for the trappers of the time, and also the Native American tribes there, and all the different tribes and the differences between them. Lots of paintings that we looked at, and of course there's a lot of trappers that kept journals of their times. Also Lewis and Clark, which was 20 or 30 years before, 20 years I think, before our movie, kept extensive journals as well about what the villages looked like, and details like how many dogs used to be in these villages and where the kids were and that sort of thing. So we just devoured all that stuff, and we go back and forth on what we'd learned, and we'd share it, and it's very exciting.
Did you ever find it difficult, because now not only is it just your vision, but you've got to go with the director's vision plus the information you're getting from these journals?
Yeah, that's a big part of it, absolutely. I think what I do is to make sure that everything I put in the sets is period correct. Absolutely everything. So, or as 99%, as much as possible. I think the anvil in the blacksmith shop might have been the wrong year, but other than that, I really try and get all that stuff right, so that no matter what, if it's in the movie, it's correct. And then I work on, does it work for the action, and does it work for where the camera is and where we want things to happen. And then I work very closely on how it looks in the monitor. If they're while they're filming, that would look really good if there was a fur hanging there, or whatever. And I have people on set to help me make that happen. But absolutely, starting with the right materials is the right thing. And depending on a really good paint department, to age it down so it looks like it's actually been used for real, and then sticking to what the camera and the actors require.
So I would imagine when you're watching it on the screen and the director says cut, if you see something's missing, you just call one of your people and they run in there and they hang that pelt or whatever the case may be. Yeah, or you try and do that in the most subtle way possible, because you don't want them to know that you didn't have it right. But yeah, I mean, usually during rehearsals, actually, we can figure that sort of stuff up, because they do have the camera up for rehearsals. So, but it's really good to have a on-set presence watching all that stuff, because once it goes in and on the movie, it's there forever. So you got to get it right. Yeah. Also with the continuity, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, got to watch that.
You guys had a ton of work with pelts. We saw numerous pelts in there. I read something about actual truckloads of roadkill following you around. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, it was one of those situations where Alejandro, the director, very creative and had great ideas, and sometimes he'd want to add depth to a camp or to a scene. And we had prosthetic animals that we had for the specific scenes that Leo was close to, or the other actors, and there was just a need to be able to draw on more raw materials. And we all often bought steaks and stuff like that for the trappers to cook by the fire. But sometimes these trappers ate a lot of meat, so sometimes you just needed things like a carcass in the background. And the local props master had a contact with the Ministry of Highways, and we were able to, and unfortunately in Alberta there is a lot of roadkill, because so many of the roads go through the wilderness there, especially where we were, that we were able to just have a refrigerated truck that kept all these animals in there. Deer, mule deer. I think we had some, we had a bit of everything. We called it the truck of death, but they had one shot at fame before they finally went to the rendering plant, I guess. So
you kind of did them a favor.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, yeah. So yeah, that was very useful to us, actually. I remember making an argument with one of the producers that I really think it's a good idea. He goes, "You want to what?" I said, I think it's a good idea, and it became very helpful for us, so that we could have the option to just bring things forward whenever you needed them. Because often these remote locations, if you had an idea, you're on your own. So we just wanted to make sure that we were ready for anything. And so, as well as that truck of roadkill and always having pelts on hand and ropes and tarps and all the things that could be necessary for living in that environment, just in case they wanted more, things like that. So yeah, it was useful.
I'm going to hope and pray it's safe to say that the raw meat that Leo was actually seen eating as his character was not from that truck.
No, it wasn't. That's a good question. No, it wasn't. That was actually, the props people were very clever. They had both the fake one that they had made out of some gelatin, and then they had a real one to show the comparison. And they were very close, but I think Leo just felt the need to get right into the real one. So it was food grade, completely safe for him to do so, other than it being kind of gross. But
That's intense.
Yeah.
There's a scene where you see, I would say, thousands of buffalo skulls. Surely you didn't just come across 1,000 of those.
No. We designed the illustration for that. We could figure out that we needed about 10,000 to actually do that, and it was a one-sided pyramid. The other side was just a flat wall. The answer came to us when we realized that we could make molds out of the buffalo skulls that we could find. So I ended up getting about 100 to 120 buffalo skulls and maybe a couple hundred cow skulls, which we mixed in with them, and that formed the base of the pyramid of skulls. But the rest of it was made with styrofoam, and we made a mold from those buffalo skulls. We arranged about 10 of them, made a mold, and then was able to repeat that mold and then put it in up to make on the structure to make the tower, the pile of bones. And then the very talented Alberta painters tied that together with the real ones, and you couldn't really tell where the styrofoam ones ended and the real ones began. So yeah, it was very successful. It was a creepy pile, but we all enjoyed putting it together. Yeah.
It was impressive.
Yeah,
I'd
cool.
never know that it was just a wall at the side.
Yeah. Well, actually, the idea actually came from, there is a famous picture, I think it's in Saskatchewan, perhaps in the late 1800s, of a pile of buffalo skulls that were and buffalo bones that I think it was all headed to a rendering plant. I think they make something out of it for concrete or something like that. Yeah. So there's a real photograph that was based on, and we tried to replicate a piece of that. So yeah.
Now you mentioned some prosthetics.
Yeah.
Is it safe to assume that the horse that he climbs into is one of those?
It's a safe assumption. Yeah.
Now, is it you that I mean, obviously it's the props department, the makeup department that works on something like that, but you get it in there and ready to go?
No, I think our team sort of helped actually position the horse and make it look like it actually had fallen off the cliff and some snow had gone around it. But the horse itself was done by a company in Los Angeles called Legacy Effects, and they built the horse. And they built the buffalo and some other things. And so they worked off of their own research to get that exactly right, and Alejandro's instructions about where they enter and how big it has to be. So my involvement in that was just with our greens department, who are the people in charge of the snow and the dirt and the plants and the trees, to make sure that it sort of fit in and looked like it had been there for a couple hours, and then the next day like it had been there even longer. So yeah. Quite a scene.
Yeah, it's pretty gruesome.
Yeah. I really was very impressed with the guts that he pulled out. They had nice weight. Yeah.
It definitely looked real.
Yeah.
They did a good job.
Steam. Yeah. It's true. That's happened in history. People have slept in animals to survive winters. It's it's a very graphic image in our movie, but it's not. It's been done before for real. If you read the journals, certainly people have survived nights by sleeping in animals like that. So
do what you got to do.
I guess so. Right? If you're cold enough, you will cut a horse open and get inside. Yeah.
Hopefully that doesn't ever happen to either one of us.
No.
Speaking of the cold, though, you filmed a little bit in BC, but as you were saying, a lot in Alberta.
Mostly in Alberta. Yeah. We had. I'm from BC, so I don't know cold like they know cold. So yeah, we had some pretty cold days. There was a scene where they're about to decide what to do with glass, and Tom Hardy is digging a grave to prepare for his imminent death. And when we first attempted to shoot that, we prepared the set, and the day of shooting it was minus 30, minus 35, and it started to really snow, and the river next to the set got an ice jam, and slushy water started to flood slowly into the set through all the snow, and it was getting pretty ridiculous. So production decided to shut it down there, and that was the break before Christmas, and then when we came back in Christmas, there was still a lot of snow left over from that storm, but then it proceeded to melt, and then we were struggling for snow, as is well reported, but we were chasing snow from then on.
So I mean, natural weather elements obviously help you in some ways, but can clearly make your job a lot tougher than it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Consistency for snow, the consistency. So if you shoot a scene over a week and a half, but it's only supposed to be 5 minutes long in the movie, and you've gone through a week and a half of Chinooks or different weather, then it's very hard for the editor and hard for the director of photography to tie it all together. But outside of filming, even getting our trucks there or getting the equipment up there, it was a lot of times, vehicles would get stuck and we'd bring another vehicle to tow and they would get stuck. It's a classic Canadian situation. So you just get used to it and you plan and you watch the weather like a hawk. I was fascinated by the Chinooks, though. I remember one day in Morley, we had real snow on the ground and the wind was coming from the east, and then 180 degree shift and the wind started to come from the west down from the mountains, and it was a Chinook and it was 10 degrees warmer. And I would have expected from BC the snow to turn to slush and then water. It just disappeared. It didn't even melt. It just evaporated. Mm-hmm. It was bizarre. And then before you know it, there was no snow at all. The ground was all brown. And the trucks of snow started to show up and we started to spread it around. So yeah, it was, there's no end to troubles. Yeah.
Makes the job fun, right?
Absolutely. In hindsight, for sure. I mean, it would be frustrating at the time for everybody, of course, Alejandro specifically, but no, I look back on the whole experience with fond memories. Absolutely.
Now, I'm gonna guess you were out there for quite a few hours each day, but when it came down to actual filming, I know there's some gossip going around there, and I hate listening to gossip, so I want to know the truth. Was it only filmed during a magic hour? Is that right?
Yes.
You only filmed an hour and a half a day?
Yeah, well, I don't know, an hour and a half, because the magic hour in winter actually extends for quite a long time because of the angle that the sun comes down. But yeah, we did only shoot in natural light. There were some scenes in the tavern, the mess hall, and I think just in the mess hall where it was all candlelight and fire. I think there was a couple of instances where they augmented that with a couple of lights just to get the f-stop up for the camera, but it was all natural light. So that is the sun, fires, and candles, and that's it. Wow. So yeah, and reflections off of snow. So it was Chivo, the DP, is a genius and decided to do that, and it was amazing. He was able to pull it off. I'm quite impressed, yeah.
So out of everything that you did on this set in particular, what really stood out in your mind as, this'll stick with me forever and this is what I love the most about this movie?
Well, working with Jack was my favorite part because I really got along with him and I enjoyed the relationship we had, and I was always happy to do things with him. But, there were certain things like Henry's desk, I really, as specific as it was, I really enjoyed working on that and getting it right. I actually got in some period correct actual letters from the 1820s that I put on his desk, and then I got a calligrapher in Calgary to replicate some of them and make some specific letters for Henry to have been sending back to the fur company, and those sort of details will never make it on camera, but I like to, it really shows the actors and the director the level that they can have confidence in the set and know that it's all good to go for all the filming they want to do, and so every little detail counts, I think, in the end. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and of course Jack was very supportive in me, and he never said it's too much or that you don't bother. It was always looking for more and more detail and getting it right, and that's always fun. So.
And I think it's safe to say you guys got it right.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the Oscar nomination.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I have one more question.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to turn it into two. But I ask each of my guests what type of socks they wear. I believe that socks tell a lot about a person.
Wool socks.
Yeah?
The brand? Do you want to know the brand?
I would love to know the brand.
I believe these are Smart Wool.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's funny you should ask because the gear that we all wore in Calgary that day that the snowstorm hit, and the next day we went on it was a Saturday the next day, and I think it wasn't until Monday that we were officially on hiatus. Well, that Saturday I went to I think the local mountain equipment co-op, and I walked in because I realized that day I was pretty cold, and I think I should get thicker socks. I think I should get a better hat. And I walk in there, and all the crew is there buying new gear. So, yeah, we paid close attention to, especially to our feet and our hands and our heads. Especially if you're from BC, you don't know what you're doing when it comes to that stuff. So we paid a lot of attention to our gear, and there was always a lot of it to keep us warm. So yes, Smart Wool socks.
And gray?
Gray.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I have a favor to ask you now.
Okay.
The night of the Oscars, when you get up and you win that award, will you text me later with a picture of the Oscars sitting by your feet, showing me your socks?
Of course I will.
Awesome. I can't wait. Thank you so much for your time.
You're
I
very
really
welcome.
appreciate it.
You're very welcome.